I'm Calliope. 8 months pregnant, I was shoved onto a wedding stage, told to sing so they could watch me break. My sister smirked, my ex-husband grinned, and that microphone? It was supposed to finish me. I didn't cry. I spoke. And what I revealed made the groom storm out and the bride hit the floor. Before we dive in, what time is it where you're listening, and which city do you call home? Drop a comment. I read everyone, and trust me, this story only gets louder from here. The porch boards groaned when I stepped up with the grocery bag balanced on my hip. Sunset laid orange stripes over Rockport Harbor, and a gull screeched somewhere beyond the tall pines. 8 months of pregnancy had turned each day into slow choreography, but tonight the cadence felt heavier. A certified mail envelope leaned against the door. Mother's cursive floated across the front like frost on glass. Urgent, Calliope. Inside, the cottage smelled of seaweed and chamomile tea I'd forgotten to drink this morning. I dropped the groceries, slit the envelope, and shook out a thick ivory program. Gilt lettering announced Dahlia Elaine Matthews and then a hyphen where the groom's name should have been. Below, in smaller script, musical offering solo by special guest Calliope Matthews. Special guest as if I were some local novelty act, not the bride's sister. My phone rang before I finished blinking. Mom on the screen. I thumbed speaker just as a second line merged. Dahlia. Father's voice joined seconds later, deep and rehearsed like Sunday pulpit. Sweetheart, isn't it beautiful? Mother's tone dripped syrup. Beautiful, I echoed, staring at the blank groom line. You'll sing Because He Lives right after the vows, Dahlia announced. Her sing-song lilt had not changed since third-grade talent shows where she took the melody and shoved me into harmony. The acoustics at First Covenant are perfect. Even you will sound good. Father cleared his throat. Calliope, forgiveness heals families. Remember Ephesians. Be kind and compassionate to one another. The baby shifted under my ribs. No one asked how the appointment had gone, or whether walking a marble aisle at 8 months was wise. I pressed a palm to the kick drum inside me, the only heartbeat in this house that cared back. Dahlia continued, And do wear something forgiving. We don't want you fainting on the altar again. Fainting? That county fair in '09 when heatstroke dropped me mid-duet. She'd finished the song alone, bowing while I recovered behind the bleachers. My teeth grazed my bottom lip. When is the wedding? This Saturday. Rehearsal tomorrow at 6, Mother said, as though I lived next door and not 30 miles along the coast. So little notice? It's intimate, Dahlia cut in. Only people who matter. A low bruise spread inside my chest. I pictured my younger self in sequined hand-me-downs, clutching a dented silver microphone while Dahlia basked under spotlights. Father always told her, Your voice soars, Calliope's blends. Blends, meaning disappears. I'll think about it. The words came out small, nothing like the woman I promised to be for my child. Good girl, Mother sighed, relief flooding through the phone. We'll mark you down. The line clicked dead before I could object. Silence swelled. Through the kitchen doorway, I spotted that old microphone on a high shelf, still silver, now chipped, cord frayed like an unraveling rope. I took it down, thumb tracing the dent where my name had once been scratched by a jealous cousin. Back then, I believed dents made things unique. Adulthood taught me they only made things disposable. Moisture blurred the room. Anger or tears? Both tasted the same. I balanced the mic on my belly like a fragile promise I hadn't agreed to keep, then dialed Lyle's number. Reflex more than intent. Voicemail. Of course. My ex-husband answered people who could advance him, not the wife he'd abandoned after the miscarriage. A knock rattled the front door. I jumped, nearly dropping the mic. Grocery oranges rolled across the linoleum. Another knock, sharper. I set the microphone on the counter and wiped my cheeks with the back of my wrist. Whoever stood outside would get the composed version of me, not the trembling girl from talent shows long dead. I opened the door, bridal white envelope still in my shaking hand, and my heart stalled when I saw who waited on the steps. And there he stood, Rowan. Clean-shaven, collar crisp, holding a bouquet of marigolds like this was some kind of Hallmark reunion. His smile, too calm, too clean, the kind that made your stomach knot before a single word was said. My eyes darted from his face to the flowers, then back again. I didn't move. I couldn't. "Wow," he said, giving me a slow once-over. "You look healthy." That's what he led with? Not, "Hi," or "How have you been?" Not even a lousy, "Congratulations." Just that. Like I was some rescued pet he found in better shape than expected. I instinctively brought my hand to my belly, protective and tight. The baby kicked once, like it sensed the shift in air. Rowan's eyes flicked down, rested there a beat too long, then back up. "I know this is a surprise," he continued, "but I figured it'd be better coming from me." "Coming from you?" My voice cracked in disbelief. He held out the bouquet. I didn't take it. "I'm marrying Dahlia, this Saturday." The words didn't process at first, like someone speaking through glass. Dahlia, my sister, wedding, him. "What?" I asked quietly. He didn't flinch. "You saw the program, right? They wanted it to be a surprise. Thought it would soften things if you sang." I blinked. My knees nearly buckled. "You're the groom?" He nodded. Just like that. As if this wasn't insanity. As if he hadn't vanished 5 years ago after I miscarried. As if he hadn't blamed me for losing the baby, accused me of being too emotional and too weak to carry anything, even responsibility. As if he hadn't ghosted me completely after that night, leaving unsigned divorce papers and silence in his wake. "You never even—" I couldn't finish. My throat swelled. "Signed the papers?" he said, cocking his head. "Yeah, about that. Dahlia and I figured it made things cleaner if we handled all that in one shot this week. Celebration and closure, you know?" I stared at him. This couldn't be real. My ex-husband, my sister, my baby kicking under my ribs like a tiny heartbeat of fury, and they wanted me, to sing their wedding recessional? "Closure," I repeated, deadpan. He stepped 1 foot up onto the porch. "Look, Calliope, it's been years. People move on. We thought involving you would be healing. You were always good at putting on a show." I nearly slapped him. He smiled wider. "Consider it your stage again." That was it. I turned and walked back inside, slamming the door hard enough to shake the wreath loose. The baby fluttered beneath my ribs. My breath hitched. I barely made it to the bathroom before I dropped to my knees. The nausea came fast, sharp, burning. I retched hard into the toilet. It wasn't just pregnancy. It was betrayal, bile rising from every crack in my chest. My head throbbed. My hands braced the porcelain like it was the only solid thing left in my life. Then came the voice. My phone had slipped from my hoodie pocket, and while I knelt in a mess of old tile and grief, it clicked to speaker. "Don't back out this time, Calliope." Dahlia's syrupy voice rang out. "We rehearsed this for years." The message ended. Silence fell. I stayed frozen, hands clenched on the cold tile. Dahlia's words replayed like a knife being twisted slow. We rehearsed this for years? What was this? Some grand production where I was cast as the backup again? Voiceless, smiling, disposable? I looked at the silver microphone still lying on the hallway floor where I'd dropped it earlier. That childhood relic we all shared. The one I was never allowed to hold during solos. That mic had frayed, just like I had. I crawled out of the bathroom back against the wall and sat there, shaking, sweaty, heart racing. I whispered, more to myself than anyone else, "Not this time." My hands slid over my belly. I won't let them rewrite me again. Across the room, the porch light flickered once, then went dark. I leaned forward and caught my reflection in the darkened window pane. My face, splotched, red, eyes swollen from holding back everything. But behind that, something steadier. Like the calm that comes before a storm breaks. "You want a show?" I whispered. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my sweatshirt and stood slowly, spine stiffening with each breath. "Fine, I'll give you one." The sun hadn't even cleared the horizon when I pulled into the chapel's gravel lot. I sat there for a moment, engine ticking in the silence, my fingers wrapped too tightly around the steering wheel. The bridal white envelope still lay on the passenger seat, crumpled now. I hadn't slept a wink, but I'd made a list. And right now, at the very top, show up, don't let them win. The chapel looked like something off a postcard. White clapboard, stained glass glowing with the early light, flower beds too perfect to be real. The kind of place where people pretended things were beautiful, even when they weren't. I got out of the car, every joint stiff. The morning air smelled of salt and damp roses. I smoothed down my blouse, adjusted my scarf, and made my way to the entrance. The nausea hadn't left, but I had. The doors opened before I even reached them. "Calliope!" Dahlia's voice cut through the quiet like sugar hiding a knife. She floated toward me in pale pink silk, arms open like she was greeting a war hero. "I can't believe you came," she cooed, pulling me into a stiff embrace I didn't return. "We're just so proud of you for showing up this time." There it was, right off the bat, the dig. "I said I would," I replied. My voice sounded too calm in my ears, detached. Behind her, people turned. Aunt Sylvia lowered her sunglasses just enough to scan me up and down. "Just don't ruin it like last time," she muttered, mostly to herself. A cousin I barely remembered chuckled under her breath. Mom didn't say a word. She looked through me like I was part of the decor. The wedding coordinator, a younger woman in heels too high for mourning, stepped in quickly with a clipboard and a tight smile. "Calliope, right? You're singing right after the vows." She handed me a program. Before I could say anything, Dahlia leaned close again. "Try not to cry this time." I froze. For a second, the stained glass warped around me, the colors shifting too fast. I remembered the last time, the solo I never finished, the sharp pain, the red, the silence backstage while everyone else clapped. I had whispered for help. No one came. My knees went weak. I turned away fast and walked outside, pushing open the side door to the garden path, trying not to run. I sat on a low stone bench beneath a hydrangea bush, pulling out my phone with trembling fingers. I tapped on the Doppler app. A beat, then another. There it was. The steady thrum of my baby's heart. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry. I just listened. "You okay?" a voice asked softly. I looked up. A guy stood a few feet away, holding a coiled wire in one hand, a bottle of water in the other. Dark hoodie, baseball cap backward, eyes kind. "I'm Nico. I'm running sound today," he said. "You looked like maybe you needed this." He held out the bottle. "Thanks," I said, taking it. My voice was dry. My throat felt like chalk. "You don't have to answer," he said, backing away slightly. "But, you sure you want to be here?" I didn't answer. Not out loud. Instead, I stood, straightened my shoulders, and walked back into the chapel. Inside, the pianist was already rehearsing, fingers drifting over ivory keys. I climbed the steps to the altar slowly. Dahlia and Rowan stood mid-aisle, practicing their timing. He saw me first. Rowan smirked and leaned in without breaking stride. "Can't wait for the big reveal," he whispered. My skin prickled. I turned to face the pews, where family sat scattered like props, waiting for me to crack. I knew it then. They weren't just here for the wedding. They were here to watch me break again, like last time. But I wasn't that woman anymore. "Mic check in 5, Nico called. I nodded, cleared my throat, and hummed the first note, steady. I didn't sleep that night, not a blink, but I made a list, and the first task was survival. By dusk the following day, I was back at the family guest house, an old shingled place our grandparents once loved. The rehearsal had drained whatever energy coffee could fake. My legs ached from hours on the chapel risers. My throat felt scraped by invisible claws. Upstairs, the hallway smelled of lilac sachets, same as when we were children sneaking cookies past bedtime. I pushed my bedroom door open, craving nothing more than pajamas and silence. Instead, I froze. The garment bag that had held my sapphire-wrapped dress, my one concession to dignity, was unzipped and empty on the bedspread. In its place dangled a bridesmaid's dress from the closet door, lime green satin, ruffled neckline, maternity cut so shapeless it might have been sewn by a spiteful scarecrow. A neon post-it clung to the hanger. "Be grateful you're invited." The loop of Dahlia's cursive mocked me in pastel ink. My stomach rolled, equal parts hunger and rage. I glanced behind me, half expecting her to pop out with a camera. No footsteps, just the wind rattling an elm outside. The baby kicked, reminding me to breathe. I pulled the small Doppler from my bag, pressed the sensor below my ribs. It took a moment to find the rhythm, but then the steady whoosh whoosh flooded the room, soft and strong. My anchor. I closed my eyes, counted 10 beats, and felt the panic settle into something sharper. Resolve. I slipped the hideous dress from the hanger. The material crackled like cheap gift wrap. With one tug, a seam popped at the shoulder. Good. Let the thing unravel before I did. Memory flared. Another ill-fitting gown. Another stage. I'd been 22, newly married, Dahlia's guest vocalist. Halfway through Ave Maria, my vision tunneled. Cramps ripped through me and crimson spread across chiffon. I'd stumbled backstage, called Rowan's name, but his seat was empty. He was outside smoking with my cousin. Dahlia finished the song, soaked in applause, while I lost our child alone. She'd claimed later she had no idea. Liar. My knees trembled now, but I wouldn't let them fold. I knelt beside my suitcase, lifted the lining, and slid out the silver envelope I'd hidden. Inside, 2 pages, DNA results confirming my baby's paternity, undeniable, notarized. I'd requested them the day Rowan resurfaced online with my sister at a charity gala, insurance against whatever theater they cooked up. Tonight it felt like a shield forged of paper and ink. I practiced the words I'd say tomorrow if cornered. No tears, no shouting, just facts. Rowan Carter is the father. Let them deal with science. A soft knock cut through my rehearsal. I tucked the envelope under a stack of nursing bras, straightened, and opened the door. Rowan leaned against the frame, sleeves rolled, casual as Sunday brunch. In his hand, my Doppler. He rocked it back and forth, the earpiece cord swaying like a pendulum. "Looking for this?" he asked, grin tilting. "You left it in the garden." He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, shutting the door with his heel. "How did you even—" "Relax," he drawled. "I was scouting usher routes, found this buzzing in the grass. Cute gadget." He lifted it to his ear, feigning curiosity. "Heartbeat's solid. Probably gets that from me." Cold spread beneath my skin. "Give it back." He dangled it higher. "You sure? Wouldn't want you to drop anything important again." I swallowed the insult, voice steady. "Put it down, Rowan." He set the Doppler on the dresser, but not before pressing the power button so the tiny speaker issued one echoing whoosh. His eyes locked on mine. "Tomorrow's going to be unforgettable, huh?" "That depends on your definition." He chuckled, scanning the room, noticing the ripped bridesmaid dress. "Oh, Dahlia's idea. Says green flatters you, like envy." He tapped the Doppler once more, then turned for the door. "Sleep tight. Big day." I waited until his footsteps faded before moving. I grabbed the Doppler, clicked it off, and shoved it beneath my pillow. My pulse thundered. They thought control came through humiliation. Wrong decade, wrong woman. I reached for my list on the nightstand and added a final bullet. Own the microphone, own the moment. He waved the Doppler like a trophy and said, "Too bad he'll never know his real dad." Then, with a smirk that made my skin crawl, he dropped it onto the bed like it was trash. I didn't reach for it. I didn't move. My hand rested protectively on the curve of my belly, as if my silence could shield both of us from what he really meant. Rowan leaned his shoulder into the doorway like he had all night to toy with me. The lamp behind me cast a long shadow over the floor, splitting the room in half, his side and mine. "Relax," he said, brushing invisible lint off his sleeve. "Dahlia just told me to bring it back. You know, can't have the baby fainting if your high notes get too sharp tomorrow." I stayed quiet. He tilted his head. Oh, come on, Calliope. Don't go cold on me now. That used to be your favorite tone when you wanted something. I finally stepped forward and picked up the Doppler, still warm from his hand. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. I could feel the poison leaking from his words, and I wasn't going to sip it. But he wasn't done. Not even close. You remember the last time you used one of those? He asked, voice suddenly soft, almost kind. It made me look up, and that's when he dropped the bomb. You were sobbing in the bathroom. What was it, 7 weeks along? 8? That timing was, well, pretty convenient. We were still deciding if we even wanted a kid. He chuckled. And then, boom, no more decision needed. I gripped the Doppler so tightly it might have cracked, but I still didn't speak. Not yet. He walked in uninvited and sat on the edge of the bed, hands steepled like some smug therapist. You know what's funny? Everyone acts like you're the victim. But let's be honest, Calliope. You always knew your place. It just took you a while to sit in it. I breathed through my nose, slow and even. Then, quietly, I asked, "So why sing with me tomorrow?" He blinked. I asked again. Why agree to stand beside me on stage in front of our whole family, knowing everything you've done? His smile returned, smug and sour. Because humiliation sings sweeter than harmony. Dahlia and I thought it'd be poetic. You, center stage, trying to hold a note, with your dignity unraveling right beside your dress seams. There it was, the real reason. He stood, brushed off his pants like this little chat was over. But before he turned, I said it. I know. He froze. About the tests, about the lab, about the voice memos, I added, voice steady, almost detached. His eyes widened just a hair. Just enough. You wouldn't, he said. I looked him dead in the face. I did. And I will. He took a breath, then stopped himself. We stared at each other across that tiny, suffocating room, and for the first time, he didn't have a line ready. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. He finally stepped back toward the door, one hand still gripping the knob like he wanted to say more but didn't know how. Or maybe he realized there was nothing left he could say that would change what was already coming. Still, he got one last jab in. Don't mess this up for Dahlia. You know how she gets. She'll cut you out for good. Again. Then he left. The room went silent, except for the soft, rhythmic hum of the Doppler in my hand. I turned it on and placed it against my skin, listening for the sound that mattered more than any insult ever could. Lub-dub, strong, steady. I sat on the bed and finally let the tears fall. Just a few. Just enough to let it out, not enough to weaken me. Then I wiped my face and whispered, "We're not the weak ones." Not anymore. Rowan's footsteps faded down the hallway, but the echo of his words lingered longer than his cologne. I stood frozen in that quiet guest room, one hand still resting protectively on my stomach. For a moment I stared at the Doppler he'd tossed onto the bed like a broken toy, like the life inside me meant nothing. But I didn't cry this time. Instead, I sat at the edge of the bed, picked up the Doppler and tucked it into my purse. His smirk would not be the last word in this story. By the next afternoon, I was dressed and walking through the manicured, rose-lined path toward the outdoor garden venue. The air was too perfect for how wrong everything felt. Guests milled about in pastel linens and designer heels, sipping champagne under white parasols. Laughter and small talk floated through the air, but I wasn't part of it. Bridesmaids passed me like I was invisible. Dahlia never even glanced my way. She was busy pretending everything was perfect, just as she'd always done. Rowan, though, he saw me. He stood near the altar in his groomsman's suit, hair slicked back too tight, smile too practiced. He raised his glass slightly when our eyes met, as if to say, "Let's see how loud you break today." I kept walking. The MC's voice rang out over the speakers. "Before we begin the vows, we have a very special performance by our bride's sister and her fiancé's longtime friend, Calliope and Rowan." The murmurs began immediately, cameras tilted up. Some guests even looked confused. Was this a surprise gift? An olive branch? Rowan joined me on the small stage set under an ivy-wrapped trellis. I could feel his energy, anticipation masked as amusement. The pianist began playing. It was a love ballad, one Dahlia loved in college. The irony almost made me laugh. I stepped up to the microphone, sang the first line. Then I stopped. Dead silence. I looked at the crowd, my voice steady. Before I continue, I want to dedicate this song to someone who has stood by me through betrayal, abandonment, and cruelty. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Some leaned in, others stiffened. I placed a hand on my belly. My daughter. She's not here yet, but she already knows what strength is. Gasps, the kind that ripple like a dropped glass in a quiet room. Dahlia's smile faltered. But this is also for someone else, I continued, stepping slightly back from the microphone. The man who helped create her. Rowan took one slow step toward me. I held up my hand. Don't. I turned to face Dahlia directly. And no, Dahlia, it's not your husband. She blinked. Once. Twice. Then froze. I gave a small nod to the tech guy beside the screen. The projector lit up. A white slide appeared. Clean, simple. DNA results. Rowan Carter, 99.9% paternal match. The garden exploded. People stood. Guests whispered. Dahlia clutched the side of her chair. Rowan hissed, "Turn that off." I didn't. A second cue. The audio started. Static. Then Rowan's voice. "Let her think she's in control." Dahlia's giggle. "She's too dumb to see what's happening. Let her sing. She'll think it's her moment." More laughter, and then complete, choking silence. Dahlia's hand slipped off her chair and she collapsed into her mother's lap. Rowan lunged toward the tech table. "Turn that off now!" But I stepped in his path. "Try not to cry this time," I said, calm, measured, and then I turned. I didn't wait for applause, didn't offer a bow. I walked straight down the aisle as the guests instinctively parted, leaving me a clear path. I didn't look back. Not even once. My hand rested on my belly, my chin held high. This wasn't a song. It was a reckoning. 3 days after the garden implosion, the house finally felt still. No musicians tuning, no guests whispering. Just me, the hum of the fridge, and the soft hiss of the kettle. I cradled a mug of decaf on the couch while morning sun warmed the hardwood. The baby rolled gently beneath my ribs, as if reminding me we'd survived the blast. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Another headline lit the screen. Sister's mic drop expose hits 2 million views. The video thumbnails were everywhere. My face, microphone in hand, Dahlia mid-collapse behind me. The comments split like fault lines, half cheering, half scolding. Strangers debated my morality, my timing, my belly size. I set the phone face down. Enough noise. Just then, a knock rapped on the front door. Quick, familiar. I opened it to find Mother clutching a grocery bag as though it were a peace treaty. "I brought chamomile," she announced, stepping inside without invitation. "Good for nerves." I let her pass. She set the bag on the counter and turned, eyes sweeping the kitchen like an inspector seeking damage. "You've created quite a storm, Calliope." I sipped my coffee. "Storms clear the air." She clicked her tongue. "You embarrassed your sister. The church board is furious. Do you ever think about how this affects all of us?" She glanced at my belly, then back to my face. "You always ruin everything." That old sentence landed like a dull knife. I didn't raise my voice. I simply walked to the door, opened it wide, and waited. The gesture said what words never could. After a long second, Mother lifted her purse with trembling hands and stepped outside. I shut the door softly behind her, then leaned against it. Breathing in the silence, she left. A calmer knock followed 10 minutes later, measured, professional. When I opened up again, a man in a slate-gray suit stood on the porch, briefcase in hand. "Ms. Matthews?" His voice was warm but businesslike. "I'm Simon Caro, attorney for a private client." He offered a card. The logo read, Eagle and Vine, Boston. I'm not selling the house, I said, half joking, half tired. Not here to purchase anything? He opened his briefcase and produced a thick envelope. Ms. Harper Everly asked me to deliver this personally. He paused. She watched your performance online. The name struck a dormant chord. Harper Everly, my childhood godmother with the loud laugh and the convertible that smelled like gardenias. She vanished after a mysterious fight with Dad when I was 9. No letters, no calls. Hands unsteady, I broke the seal. Inside sat a typed letter and several neatly clipped documents. A trust fund allocation, prepaid prenatal care with a top Boston obstetric team, and 6 months of rent for a larger place closer to the hospital. Simon cleared his throat. Ms. Everly instructed me to tell you, and I quote, "She was never invisible to me. She regrets losing contact." Moisture blurred the words on the page. I pressed my palm to my belly, steadying both of us. "Is this real?" I whispered. "As real as it gets," Simon said. "She's also secured counsel for any custody or defamation proceedings you may face, all pro bono." The baby kicked, almost in reply. I dabbed my eyes with my sleeve and signed one sheet, acknowledging receipt, not surrendering autonomy. Simon gathered the paperwork, shook my hand, and left a card in case I needed anything. After he drove away, the house felt different, lighter, as if someone had opened a window to let fresh air chase out the old. I sat at the kitchen table, letters spread before me, steam curling from the forgotten mug. Outside, gulls wheeled over the harbor, unconcerned with human scandals. "We're not alone," I murmured to the child within. For the first time in months, the words felt true. Yet even as hope settled, a tremor of caution remained. The phone on the table buzzed again. New notifications, fresh opinions, family fallout I hadn't read. Support came with scrutiny. Freedom carried a cost. But I was learning to pay in courage, not tears. The morning air inside the conference room smelled like copier toner and old wood polish. I sat across from Harper at a long walnut table, sunlight slanting in through narrow blinds behind her. A glass pitcher of water sat untouched between us. The room was quiet enough to hear the hum of the fluorescent light above. She looked different now. Older, of course, but not in a fragile way. Her hair, once golden and wild, was now silver and pulled into a neat, low bun. Her eyes, though, still sharp, still watching everything. Harper reached across the table and rested her hand gently over mine. "I should have never let them push me out," she said, her voice cracked just enough to make me pause. I had come here expecting paperwork, not history. But Harper, it seemed, had come to close a wound. "They made it clear," she continued, "that if I kept questioning how they treated you, I wouldn't be welcome. And then, suddenly, I wasn't. No more Sunday dinners, no more birthdays. Your mom even told people I'd developed a drinking problem." She laughed bitterly. "I didn't even drink." I sat quietly, my fingers curling slightly under hers. "Why didn't you fight back?" I asked. "I did, but it was quiet. At first, I tried to talk to your grandmother. She and I used to co-own part of the estate up north, the lake house, and some rental property downtown. Your mother didn't like that. She pushed to remove me, but the paperwork—" Harper opened a folder in front of her, sliding it toward me. "It never went through. Legally, I still held interest." My breath caught. "Wait, those properties? My parents are still living in the lake house. My sister lives in the condo by Lyndale." Harper nodded slowly. "Technically, they're borrowing it, and now, with me reinstating rights and naming you proxy." She pointed to a highlighted line in the document. "You hold co-ownership, effective immediately." I didn't speak. I just stared at the names, my name, Harper's, the addresses that had always felt like symbols of power and exclusion in my family, now under my name, through Harper. It was too much. "Calliope," Harper said gently, "I don't want to kick anyone out. I don't want drama. But this is about acknowledgement, about balance." I nodded, slowly. "No eviction," I said, "but let's put the truth on paper." We signed documents that afternoon. No press, no cameras. Just her, me, Simon the lawyer, and the quiet clack of ballpoint pens scratching ink onto cold legal parchment. 3 days later, over mimosas and French toast at a country club brunch, my sister laughed loudly. "She humiliated herself," she said, waving her fork. "Seriously, who announces betrayal in a wedding mic? Trashy." I wasn't there, but a friend sent me the clip. Someone else at brunch had recorded it. My sister, mother, and a few family friends were all there, smiling like they hadn't just detonated a family bomb. Then, in the middle of a refill pour, a courier walked through the lobby. He stopped at the table, clearing his throat. "Delivery for Mrs. Callahan. Mr. Callahan, Ms. Everdeen." He placed 3 large envelopes on the white linen tablecloth, each one stamped with my name. I'd asked Simon to deliver them that way, quiet, legal, and undeniable. My sister ripped her packet open and froze. My mother paled. My father... He looked like someone had knocked the air out of him. "She's going after the family," he whispered, jaw clenched. My sister practically screamed, "I earned that condo. I paid for the backsplash, the hardwood, everything." My statement to the press came a few hours later. Simple, measured. No comment, except to say, I never wanted revenge. I wanted truth. Harper stood beside me as I read the line outside the courthouse steps. She didn't say a word, just placed her hand on my back as the flash of cameras lit the early evening air. When one reporter shouted, "Is this the end of it?" Harper answered quietly, but firmly, "We're not finished yet." And I knew then, this wasn't about property, or headlines, or punishment. It was about standing where they said I'd never be allowed. It was about saying, I was here, I mattered, and I wasn't done. The rustle of papers still echoed in my head as I walked out of that brunch 2 days ago. The way my father's jaw clenched when he saw my name on the documents. The way my sister's voice cracked. "I earned that condo!" As if screaming could rewrite law. Now here I was, 2 days later, standing just behind the curtained arch of the rescheduled wedding. Fewer guests this time. More curated, more controlled. My sister always loved staging things, even her damage control. "Private ceremony," she'd told the press. "Just family. Peaceful." The room smelled of orchids and desperation. Someone tugged at my sleeve. A young planner in soft pink whispered, "They're ready for you." I placed one hand under my belly. My baby had been restless all morning, and walked calmly toward the stage. Cameras dotted the room, quiet but watching. My parents sat stone-faced in the front row, clinging to their performance like lifelines. My sister stood near the altar, forced smiles straining under the weight of her own undoing. She leaned close as I passed. "Try not to cry this time," she hissed, too low for anyone else to hear. I smiled. "Don't worry, I won't." The mic waited for me like an old ghost. Last time it had heard my voice tremble. This time it would carry something else. I adjusted it, took a breath, looked out. "I was asked to sing again today," I began, "but I have something to say instead." A flicker in the room, unease behind champagne glasses. "I won't waste time with pretty notes or lyrics. I'm here to speak clearly, for once, without being told to smile and keep the peace." My voice didn't shake, my hands didn't sweat. "I want to talk about Harper." I scanned the room. Some of you remember her. Some of you were told to forget. But she's my aunt, my grandmother's business partner, and the only adult who ever told me the truth when I was growing up. My father shifted. My mother blinked fast. She was erased, on purpose, pushed out, because she questioned why a little girl, me, was always left out, why I wasn't treated like the rest, and for that, they made her disappear. I paused. She didn't vanish. She was pushed. A low murmur. Then I said what no one expected. "And she never gave up her rights. In fact, the trust, those houses you've lived in, the properties you claimed, they weren't entirely yours." I let the sentence settle. "The condo? Harper's name was still on the deed, legally mine too. So was the lake house, the portfolio, the silence. That was yours, not ours. A gasp near the back. I turned. An older man stood slowly, thin, gray hair, blue tie. My breath caught. "Is that?" someone whispered. He raised a hand. "I'm Douglas Hamill," he said. "Harper's attorney for 20 years. Everything she said is accurate. Every word." Silence fell like a dropped mirror. The groom, my sister's fiancé, turned his head sharply toward her. "You told me all of it was yours," he muttered. She reached for him. "It was. It is. She's lying." But he stepped back, then turned and walked straight out of the room. Her mouth dropped. She tried to run after him, but her heels snagged on the carpet, and she collapsed to the ground, sobbing. "You ruined everything," she wailed, mascara bleeding. "You did this to me." I stayed at the mic, calm, centered. "No," I said softly. "I just refused to let the show go on." The crowd sat stunned, some embarrassed, some quietly relieved. I looked to the back. Harper wasn't there. Her health was too fragile, but I imagined her watching, eyes proud and fierce. That was the last word I said that day. No more speeches, no more shame. I stepped down and left the room, while behind me, a family began to unravel, publicly. Months later, the leaves had turned. I stood at the window of my small home, rocking my baby in soft rhythm. He was asleep, face tucked against my chest. A photo of my grandmother smiled from the shelf. Next to it, a frame held Harper's letter, its ink faded, but the words clear. "Speak. When they expect you silent. That's the real inheritance." I smiled. They'd taught me silence, but I chose a different inheritance. Truth. And I gave it to my child. I didn't inherit silence. I inherited strength, and I gave it a voice.